Good afternoon. Hope everybody is doing well. It's lovely to see you. Thursday, 4 o'clock, must be Ignite. So we are going to jump right in. I know I always say that and then we always go off on a tangent. And yet today I really mean it. We're going to dive right back in, pick up where we left off yesterday. We got through the first part of the Mastering the Listing Consultation scripts. We're going to pick up where we left off, which was fiduciary versus functionary. And if you remember, I did ask that you take a read through the fiduciary versus functionary script. So grab those scripts if you would. And somebody tell me, after reading through the fiduciary versus functionary 2 paragraphs, and again, I asked you to do that at home because we're not going to go through them here. Instead, I want to point out a couple of things for you and talk with you about how many of your colleagues work this particular piece of the consultation. What did you notice when you read through those 2 paragraphs between agent and consultant, or functionary versus fiduciary? What did you see? All right, please, not all at once.
I saw that there's a real difference between the attitudes between the two types, and one is more for delivering, educating the client, as opposed to just looking to sell a house.
Yeah, you know what, Stephanie, that's 100% right. Right, the description of the agent or the functionary is just that. It's about process. It's about getting from point A to point B. The description of the consultant or fiduciary, which is you, is way different, right? I want to point out a couple of words that are used in the fiduciary piece. Consultant, special relationship, trust, confidence, responsibility, asks questions, listens, recommends solutions, meets or exceeds needs, educate, great business decision, critical, right? Those are a lot of really important words that when used well, describe that relationship of partnership that we've been talking about, right? Now, here's what I was going to point out to you. Most of your colleagues don't use this script as a script. They instead have some bullet points about the difference and utilize either a document, or if they're working off of a PowerPoint, right, they utilize the bullet points to show the differences. The reality of the question at the end is an interesting one, right? If given a choice, which would you prefer? A functionary or a fiduciary, an agent or a consultant? But the whole idea of this piece of the script is to point people in the direction of, you are different because you operate under fiduciary responsibility. You are their fiduciary, which means their needs above yours, their needs above all else. I will tell you, people who understand what that word means, I know for a fact that I have taken listings because I have used the word fiduciary, and my competitors have not. Because people who understand what that is, that's important to them. Make sense? So mostly what I want you to take away from these 2 paragraphs is the idea of how different what it is you're being trained to do is from just being a real estate agent. When you are a skilled consultant, when you are a skilled fiduciary, you speak differently, you behave differently, because it's always about somebody else. And it's a really, 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 really important distinction. Comments or questions on that? Perfect. All right, so the next piece of our needs analysis, the next piece of our listing consultation, I gave it away, is the needs analysis. It's like me saying, and the butler is, I mean, the killer is. So the next part of the listing consultation is the needs analysis. Now you'll see that when we work on the buyer consultation, which happens next week, that we will have a longer version of a needs analysis. The seller needs analysis is really done not to assess motivation all over again, right? You've kind of done that a bunch of different times. You did it when you set the appointment, you did it when you confirmed the appointment, right? You did it maybe at the house during the walkthrough if you asked if there are any questions. You've confirmed the motivation in the setting the stage portion. So you're not really looking for motivation in this needs analysis. Instead, this needs analysis is done to help you guide yourself through the process of understanding exactly what's important to the seller. Because sellers have different things that are important to them. And oftentimes we make assumptions about what those things are, and oftentimes we would be incorrect, right? So would it be helpful, instead of just reading the script, would it be helpful if we just kind of demonstrated what that looks like, what the needs analysis actually looks like? I'll be happy to play the agent. I just need someone to play my seller who I get to ask these questions of. So I'll just start. If you decide that you're going to be that seller, just unmute and give me an answer. So here's the model of the needs analysis. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very desirable and 1 being not desirable at all, what one thing would have to happen to make the sale of your property a real 10?
Full ask.
So full ask. And so are you speaking about the price?
Yes.
Excellent. And so could you do me a favor, Kate? Could you just be a little more specific? Could you quantify that? What do you expect your full ask to be?
You know, we were really hoping for somewhere around 500,000.
Okay. Excellent. And so talk to me about why a $500,000 sale price is important to you.
You know, we made some changes to the home and upgraded some things. And I know some of my friends in the area who have sold have gotten something similar. So I just kind of was thinking that we'd be on par.
Got it. And receiving that amount of money, what does that do for you and your family? Why is it important that that number be attained?
You know, it kind of proves that we had the equity we thought we had in it, so we can make the next move and just buy our condo that we're looking at to downsize and then have some stuff set aside for us for the future. Got it.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. If there was just one more thing that we could add to your experience, right? So that $500,000 sale price clearly would make it a 10. If we could add just one more thing that would make it like a real 10 plus, what would that be?
To selling the house, just that it be quick. You know, something in less than 60 days would be great.
Got it. And so just so I'm clear, when you say less than 60 days, do you mean less than 60 days to receive an acceptable offer, or do you mean to a closing date?
To receive an acceptable offer.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. And what about that time frame, Kate, is important to you and your family?
Well, we're hoping to get out of here before summer comes.
Understood. Is there a plan behind that? Any particular reasons why that's important?
Sure. So the condo we're looking at is in the Carolinas, and we would really like to be there for the summer to kind of enjoy all of that it has to offer. Understood.
Perfect. I might ask you to take me with you.
Come visit anytime if you can pull this off in 60 days.
Indeed. And to be careful what you offer me, because I am writing all this stuff down. I may circle back to you right after the closing. And so on a more serious note, if there were just one more thing about the sale of this property that would really just send it over the moon for you, can you think of anything else that would really make this the perfect experience?
You know, I'd love for it to go to, I mean, not that we have any choice of who buys the home, but I'd love for it to go to a family. you know, someone else who will kind of enjoy living here and enjoying the area like we have.
Got it. Okay. So sort of like seller of your choosing, yes?
Huh, yes.
Understood, understood. And just tell me, why is that important to you?
Gosh, you know, I think of all the memories we made here and the wonderful experiences we've had, and I would just love for someone, obviously, to make them their own, but to be able to have that opportunity in the place that we were able to do it as well.
Understood, understood. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing those things with me. I do have just kind of one more question, if I could. If you could only have one of those three things that we just put on the table for you, which one would it be?
Oh. Gosh, you know, I hate to say that money's a motivator, but I think to be able to get the equity out of it that we hope for so that we can have the retirement we're hoping for and the life in the Carolinas that we're planning would be great.
Okay, excellent. So the $500,000 sale price, of those three, the most important for you.
Yes.
Okay, and that's to say that if it took maybe 61 days to get the offer and it didn't quite go to the family that you were picturing in your mind, that you still might be okay moving forward.
Yes.
Okay, excellent, excellent. All right, and so at the risk of sounding like the pest of the day here, if you had to pick one of the two remaining, if there's only room for two and you had your $500,000 sale price, which goes in that number two spot, the timing or the family of choice?
That's tough. You know, I think a family of choice. I think I'd be willing to be a little more flexible on the timing if I knew it was, you know, somebody was taking a little bit longer to get their things together because they really wanted it for their family. Got it.
Got it. Perfect, perfect. So it looks like, from a priority perspective, based on the three things that you put on the table for us tonight, the sale price of $500,000 or better, let's say $500,000 or better, is most important to you. The seller being kind of your seller of choice, second most important to you, and the third priority would be that less than 60 days. Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So before we move forward, Kate, let me just ask a real quick question. Who else in your experience has consulted you in this manner on satisfying those specific needs?
Well, we haven't worked with an agent or anything since we bought our home, you know, 20 years ago.
Got it. Got it. And so if I could help you hit those targets at this point, what are your thoughts about moving forward and listing the property so that we can be in business together?
You know, I think that if you are, you know, kind of motivated the same way I am and we are to do the things and kind of work within the parameters that we've discussed, you know, the price range and something around the time frame. And obviously, you know, we can't choose, but, you know, maybe if it went to a nice family, we'd love that. I think that would work well for us to go into business together.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm excited to get started. And so with that, thank you so much for sharing. And let's move into market conditions, if that's all right.
That'd be great.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you, Kate. You were brilliant. And just in case anyone was wondering, Kate and I did not rehearse that ahead of time. She just volunteered out of the blue. I had no idea who I was going to be talking to, which is part of the fun, I have to tell you, right? Because you don't know who you're going to be talking to when you're sitting across from a new seller. And what's fascinating is that in this scenario, Kate ended up being very similar to many other sellers. She had three things that were important to her. In this case, the one that ended up being number one did come out first. However, if you noticed, when we prioritized, she actually switched number three for number two and number two for number three. She kind of moved that around. Sometimes money doesn't come up at all in this conversation. I know that for some of you that is like, you don't quite believe me. And yet I will, for those of you who have asked these questions, can you confirm that sometimes when you ask these questions, money doesn't even come up? And right? Bogdan, Donna, right? Doesn't come up. And so somebody unmute and tell me why it's so critically important for you to go through this short little exercise with the seller. Why is it critically important? Yes, Bogdan.
You said this. You said the pace of the conversation.
Yeah, you absolutely set the pace of the conversation, right? What else do you set in this conversation? Go ahead, Donna.
You actually find out what their thoughts, what their needs, what their motivation is. To assume that even if they say something like, I want to move to the Carolinas, to them, I don't know what that means until we've gone down that whole path that you've done. It isn't what I mean when I say I have to move to the Carolinas.
Yeah, indeed, right? So you're helping them remember, you're helping them understand exactly what's important for them. And again, critically important that you now know the things that matter to them without making assumptions. Go ahead, Georgia.
I was actually going to say the same thing. If I were the client listening to that, I'd be like, well, I didn't even think of this for myself. So it's putting it into perspective for me too.
Yeah, so true. And it's a really valid point that Georgia makes, because great consulting has clients kind of feel that way. They're on the other side thinking, you know what? That's a really good question. I'm kind of glad you asked it, because I haven't even asked it of myself. I haven't given it a kind of a thought. I thought selling a house was just selling a house. Now I want you to recognize that I didn't just ask Kate to give me the 3 things that were important to her. I asked her specific questions to help understand why they were important to her. That happens, as Georgia points out, for 2 reasons as well. First and foremost, it's to help them understand why they're even giving those answers. And then when they say them out loud, now I understand it. Now I have some better ammunition, right? If later on we have a conversation and Kate decide, and the listing price is supposed to be, I don't know, the comps all say like, $525. Well, let's make it harder. The listing comps all say $495. And Kate was really looking for a $500K sale price. What do I now know other than she would like a $500,000 sale price and why she wants that? What do I also now know that I can use to help guide her to make a better decision? I'll give you a hint.
Yeah.
Hey, Donna.
The other stuff that she put on the table, that was important.
Yeah, exactly right. Because it's not just about money for Kate. Part of this conversation was about her getting to the Carolinas to enjoy the summer. And so when she and I are kind of going back and forth now, and she's like, you know what? The numbers seem to indicate like $499, and that we're already underneath where I really wanted to be. Can't we just list it at $539 and hope for the best? And the answer is, well, certainly. Let me ask you this question. If you made that choice and it took 120 or 180 days to find that buyer, and you missed summer down in the Carolinas, not just you, but you and your family missed summer. No tire swings, no swinging at the lake club, no boating. Oh, man, what are your thoughts around that? Are you willing to concede something that you indicated was so important? Right, so you have some additional ammunition and to help people balance out their decisions. Now, maybe Kate says, yeah, you know what, the kids will get over it. Well, if we're there in September, yeah. But maybe she starts to think, you know what? If we miss the summer, now we're also talking about school starting. Do I really want to move after school starts for my kids? Oh, and now we're talking about the Carolinas. What do I know about school starting in the South? School starts a lot earlier in the South than it does in the North. So yikes, now we kind of need to be there by like the end of July in order to make sure the kids are enrolled and can start school. And it starts people thinking about the actual process of what they're doing and what's really important to them differently than someone just being stuck on a number. And it gives you as the consultant the ammunition. I keep saying ammunition, and I don't mean it that way, but you get my point, right? It gives you extra detail to help guide them to make the best decision possible. That doesn't mean that Kate's ultimate decision might really revolve around the 500 and the rest of it, be damned. That is ultimately her choice. And then we'll have to run through a different conversation around those numbers, which we'll get to as soon as we get to the pricing. Right, but this little step here is critically important to really help guide you and them. Basically what they're telling you here is, these are the 3 things that if you can handle for me, you're hired. Which is why towards the end, I just asked that question. Like, who else has consulted you this way? What I heard was nobody. Great, so if I can help you meet or exceed those goals, are we ready to say yes to each other? Are we ready to be in business together? Now, Kate was non-committal with her answer, right? Which frankly is entirely what I expected. Had she said yes, we would pivot and haul out the contract. Had she said no, I would have said exactly no, or what she said, which was, things seem to be going well, but let's kind of see where it goes. My answer to her was an assumptive close, if you heard it. Great, I'm so excited to get started. Let's talk about market conditions, right? I heard her answer as, you're hired, which is why I asked the question. And then I just validated it back. And when you validate it back, what Kate heard me say was, he's ready. It's just pushing me closer and closer and closer to being the one. See how all this is working? It's kind of genius. I just have to tell you. I didn't write it. This is not about me. The system itself is kind of genius. And it takes all of the guesswork off the table. I can tell you that I was a listing agent most of my in the field career, and I have done things both ways. I have done things from the let me just make it up as I'm going along perspective, which, by the way, when you make it up enough over and over again, it ends up being a script. It's just not a very good script, right? And I've done it this way. This way is far more effective. And it puts you in the driver's seat, and you're actually consulting people. You're actually helping people help themselves, which is different than the used car salesman version of real estate. Make sense? Any questions on the needs analysis? Perfect. Thank you, Kate, for volunteering. I appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, so I wasn't kidding when at the end of my needs analysis with Kate, I said, would it be okay if we spoke about market conditions? Because that is the next step. And if you look in your packet, you'll see a paper with 7 questions on it. These questions are also critically important. Don't skip them. Don't skip them. So here's what we're going to do. I'd like one of you to be the agent and ask me these questions. I will be your potential seller. Let's run through these quickly so that you can hear what they sound like, talk about them, and then move forward into additional market conditions conversations. Who's going to take that? Come on, it's just reading things off a piece of paper. I know you all can do that. Some of you can do it in multiple languages.
Okay, I got it.
Eric, I appreciate it. But let's do it in English, please.
Oh, I was going to do it in French, but okay. Here we go. So, Mr. Scott, before we get into the facts that I have prepared for you to review, I'm actually curious to know what it is that you have heard or seen recently about the housing and financial market.
Well, what I've heard and seen, right, is that things are like there's no inventory and things are kind of flying off the shelves.
So can you explain that a little more? What your thoughts are about that? What specifically have you heard about things flying off the shelf, no inventory?
Specifically, I do have a friend who recently put their house on the market, who had, I think, 6 offers in like the first 48 hours or something ridiculous like that. right? Lines down the street for an open house, and I think ended up selling their house for, you know, well over their asking price. So specifically, that's kind of, you know, what I know, just based on
Right.
their information.
Right. Well, your friend is lucky to have 6 offers in such a short time frame. So, what do you think this is a general phenomenon, that this is national, or you think this is just local because we're in a state with good inventory, fast buyers?
You know what? That's a great question, and I don't know that I know the answer to that. The information came ultimately from you know, the friend who is local, so I guess I'll answer. I kind of know it's happening locally from them, but I don't know if it's nationwide or not. Just not sure.
Okay. No, that's fair. That's fair enough. So, but let's talk about your own property here that you want to put up for sale. Yeah. So if we're saying that there's low inventory and things are flying off the shelf, how do you think this might affect the sale of your property today?
Well, what I'm hoping is that I get the same experience, right? If it's a rocket ship ride, I'd kind of like to strap in and ride the rocket ship myself. So that's what I'm hoping.
Okay, I would hope the same for you. So, and do you have any other thoughts on the current market conditions before we move forward?
No, I think no, not necessarily.
So, okay, so no thoughts, but maybe you have any specific question that I might answer tonight about the market, so we are sure that we can cover them and move forward.
Yeah, I think just ultimately looking at, I'd like to know kind of what's driving the market instead of just looking at the market. So if we could have a brief conversation about the drivers, I think that will help me make a better decision.
Great, that's a great question. Let's look at some numbers together now, okay?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Eric. I appreciate that. So, what did you notice about those questions? Tell me your thoughts about what those questions attempt to uncover, because there's really just one main reason why we ask all these questions.
Are you, top of mind, are you doing a reality check of the mindset of the seller?
So yeah, you're absolutely doing a reality check. It's a reality check combined with like a brain dump. So the seller gets to kind of give you where they're standing. They get to tell you what they know, why they know it, how they know it, and how they think it affects them, which gives you tools to use later on, because from here we move into reality, right? This could be reality, or it could be fantasy. Sometimes you ask these questions and you, like, the answers you get, you're like, okay, like what, really? What planet do you live on? Certainly not the one. I'm standing on Earth. Like, which one are you standing on? And sometimes, I mean, this one was pretty much grounded in reality. I mean, the things I said were real about what was happening in the market. Sometimes that's not the case. And so here's where I want to just throw a word of caution, right? It was interesting to me because listening to Eric translate the questions, I almost stopped to say, don't customize, just read the questions. I didn't because, Eric, you're smart enough to customize the questions appropriately, right? Here's the trap that sometimes you get into though. If someone gives an answer that you're not expecting, and you've trained yourself to kind of ad lib through some of this, sometimes you get sucked into a conversation prematurely about that fantasy land. And I want you to be cautious around that, which is why sticking to the script, question, answer, right? Your job through all of this is to listen. This is where you show them that you are an aggressive listener. You're going to ask the question, and then it's written for you like a form, A, so you don't necessarily have to memorize it, and B, so that you can then take notes as to what it is. The taking notes portion is to help you stay focused on just listening, right? You can, so when the answer comes back, you can simply validate, thank you, I understand, got it, right? Try not to offer judgment words, right? Don't say things like excellent or great answer or are you sure or, right? Be careful you're not going there. Yes, Eric, question.
Yeah, can you tell me where you were about to say stop? Where I would have made a mistake? Or?
Well, so I almost stopped you only because I noticed from the beginning that you were customizing. And I wanted to be certain that we were sticking on kind of on track. But again, your customizations were effective and appropriate. So it just worked for the role play. You didn't head into danger. I just wanted to point it out because sometimes when we're not just sticking to the short, sweet version of the script, that's an invitation to sometimes get yourself in trouble. For example, if I had said, how do you believe that these realities might affect you and your property? And instead of saying, I want to get on the rocket ship ride, I said something like, well, you know, my $500,000 house should be worth $650 based on everything I'm hearing. Your job there is to jot down 650, say, I understand, and then ask the next question. And when you start to personalize and customize too much, there's a tendency to lean into that and start having a conversation. The negative there is the only conversation you get to have makes the seller wrong before you even get to the actual comps, right? And the last thing you want to do is make the seller wrong. Even if they're 110% wrong, the second you make the seller feel wrong, you've lost the listing. So instead, we're going to be just listening through all of that, jotting those things down, knowing that we may have our work cut out for us when we get to the comps later on, but we're not answering that or commenting on it. There's no commentary involved in the answers.
So just suppose that you were telling me something instead of like there's low inventory, they're flying off the shelf. You tell me something that is out of this world and not even realistic. And then there's still this question like, how do you believe that these realities, and that's where the word realities, would we still use that if somebody is telling us something that's totally out of context, not true?
Yes, stick with the script, because what you're attempting to do is bring them back to reality, right? Even if they're speaking about things that aren't quite, it's real to them, right? Because their perception is their reality. And so if all of a sudden it's 650 in their mind and it's not, for you to start challenging that by changing the words, again, starts to make them feel wrong. And we don't want to have them feel wrong ever. We always want them to feel empowered to make great decisions instead of feeling wrong or right per se. Donna Gilbert, what do you have for us?
So I just want to point out the lead into this script, I love so much, you know that. The lead into this script is so critically important, it gets lost and you don't realize because of what's going to come next. Remember, you said, before the facts that I brought, what do you know? Okay, so you've already said, I have the facts, the data right here. And sometimes when Rick is role-playing this, he actually like touches the paper. Before we get into the facts that I brought, let me ask you a few questions about what you know. So you've already set it up that what they say may or may not be reality. And then you, as Rick said, then you bring them back around, but that's coming.
Yeah, and that's a really important point to make, right? The first line of this does set the stage before we get into the facts that I have prepared for you to review, right? So we've already set the stage that what I have is reality. It may agree with your reality or it may disagree with your reality, and yet I've brought the truth. And so we're going to move through your thoughts, and then we'll move into some macro conversations about what's happening in the market, and then we'll get micro with your property. But we've already set the stage that I've got the facts, Jack. So here we go. Love it. Well, thank you very much for that, Eric. I appreciate that that role play. Any other questions on these important questions? Yes, Elena.
If the seller says he wants to be at 650 and your facts say it's 500, you'll still make him feel wrong. This conversation is happening in the second appointment when I have CMA prepared, right?
Well, so this script that we're working through is the second appointment, right? It is the consultation. And so if at this point in time, this person decides to say 650, I already know that that's going to be way off the mark. And we're coming to the conversation that we're going to have with this particular seller about what the market looks like and what the comps look like. We may have to have a conversation around the differential, or what I have experienced, part of why this system that we're about to get into with you is so powerful, is that by the time you get to the end of it, most sellers have now self-discovered that that 650 is fantasy land. Now, that doesn't mean you might not have to have a conversation around it. You might have to have a conversation around, I wanted this. Sometimes the answer to that is, I understand. And yet, based on the data that we've just gone through, where do you think the best positioning for your property is to make sure that you outperform all of the other competitors, right? But we're coming to that. So what I would encourage you to do is hold that question just for 20 minutes more. And if you still have it by the time we get to the end of the SPA, let's dive back into it. But I think the answer to it is coming. Perfect. All righty. So any other questions before we move forward on that? Okay, so we move from those market conditions questions into two quick looks at what's happening in the market on a macro level, right? You're all familiar with macro and microeconomics, right? The macro is kind of the big picture. The micro is them. The micro is going to be the smaller picture, which is the comps that are relevant to their property. But before we get to that, before we get to specifics, we want to make sure they understand what's happening in the market in general. So we're going to do that with two tools. The first tool is called the Brokermetric Supply and Demand Graph. Brokermetric Supply and Demand Graph. The second tool is called Month Supply of Inventory. So we're going to go through both of them relatively quickly. Debbie Orr, you and I spoke about something earlier, and frankly I can't remember exactly what the foundation of that conversation was. Is that something that is
appropriate?
Appropriate to be interjected now?
It was all about motivation.
Okay, so why don't you give us that that conversation, because we've kind of been through the motivation piece, but it becomes relatively important again once the numbers are on the table. So so if you could just give us some thoughts on motivation.
So it's become more and more important to really understand what's going on and why people are making decisions to sell or to buy right now. And the conversation is not location, 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 but motivation, motivation, motivation. And this came from the pivot shift call this morning. Somebody suggested, be very careful. We are not, when we're talking through market conditions with our buyers or our sellers, ourselves creating the objections for a seller not to sell or a buyer not to buy. And we also have to be careful that we're not buying into their translation of the market. I thought that was very powerful, because I know the natural tendency is to want to agree with somebody. And in many situations right now, it's just not right. We're not helping them when they're making decisions based on faulty logic around what's going on in the market. So the solution is to really get to the ground of their motivation. And we do that by going not 2 times deep or 3 times deep, but 5 times deep, asking question after question after question after question after question until we're really sure we get why they're doing something or not doing something, understanding their true motivation so that we can use it to help them make a logical decision. So it goes, what is it that's causing you to want to sell your home now? Where will you be going? Why are you going there? What's taking you there? And what else? And is there anything else that's making you want to do this? Until you really dig down and get to the core, and then translating whatever that motivation is, it's the grandchildren. How would being close to your grandchildren make your life different? And really ask that. Use that sentence. That's your foundation sentence. That's your final sentence. How would having $50,000 in cash out of the sale of your home make your life different? Whatever that is. And then make sure that if there's any hesitation, you get clarity around what that hesitation is by asking. And these are words to live by. Every consultation should have this in it, unless it's a slam dunk they're moving forward. What is your biggest concern? Take the time to listen to what deeply rooted concerns may be holding them back. I just think it's almost a formula, and it's simple, and it's very other focused. It's very focused on them.
Yeah, I love that. And go ahead, Donna. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the call this morning that Debbie is referring to was so powerful. I mean, I almost wept. I mean, and that sounds like extreme. And yet it's in the Shift book, pages 184 and 185. And one of the things, and these are Gary's words, these are not my words or anybody else's. He said that you have to keep pulling the string, was the term he used, as in asking questions. You have to keep pulling the string until the heart, that's the emotion, sits equally with the head. And if you really ingrain that, and on page 185, he says that asking questions, personal questions, diving really deep, he feels that that is our fiduciary duty. Back to the beginning of the call we had tonight. I mean, and it's so powerful when you get that. Thank you, Debbie, for saying that. It changes how you do this business and how you deal with different people in their life stages. And that's so important.
And changes it, I dare say, for the positive, right?
Mhm.
Changes it for the better, because it's so, I think Donna just said other focused. Either Debbie or Donna just said other focused.
Mhm.
So very true. So very true, right? And recognize that, listening to this, some of you are sitting thinking, well, there are times when you may have to disagree with a client, right? And my thought on that is stay focused on, again, being the consultant. I got to have a very direct, let's just leave it at direct, coaching conversation this afternoon. And I asked permission to be as direct as I knew I needed to be, got it, and then double checked because I knew I was going to be direct. So I made sure that when this person said yes, that they really meant yes. And so what's my point? My point is there are ways you can deliver direct information and make a point without making somebody wrong. And the example of the coaching conversation I had to have this afternoon, trust me when I tell you, right? Even when you're practiced at this, it's something that for me at least, I have to think about, right? Because by design, by behavior, I wanted to just take out my 2x4 and start smacking away. However, that doesn't communicate in an effective manner. It is how I choose to communicate. And yet in this scenario, asking permission to be direct and then consciously turning the things I wanted to state into questions such that the person on the other end could self-discover the answers made it a much more powerful conversation for them. And part of this conversation we're having today, and as we move into what for many people is the most exciting part of a listing consultation, and for others, the most terrifying, right? And I want to help you make it not terrifying. Terror, there's no power in terror, right? A little nervousness, sure, you can turn it into excitement and enthusiasm and use it. Terror, there's no real use for terror, right? Besides, if you're in person, now you're sweating, even if it's cold outside, right? It's bizarre. People are asking if you need a towel, right? They don't want you sitting on their cushiony chairs because you're sweating too much, right? But you get my point. So terror is not the place to be. But why on earth are we talking about terror? Oh, because we were going down the road of helping people self-discover, right? And so the version of pricing and positioning that we're about to dive into is 100% written from the perspective of allowing you, utilizing the motivation that Debbie and Donna were talking about, utilizing the focus on the other person's goals and needs that they were talking about, coupled with the idea of asking great questions to help people self-discover the answers they need to self-discover. That's what this whole system is about. It's the foundation of what we're about to do. So really, really relevant stuff. Thank you guys for sharing. We appreciate it. Nobody on this call knew that you also were minoring in in psychology, right? It's a major in real estate, a minor in psychology. And you know what? To some extent, it's less about psychology and more about behavior. When you understand people's behavior, let me take a half step back. When you understand behavior such that you understand your own behavior and how that marries or needs to marry with others' behavior such that you're creating results that are beneficial for both of you, that's the magic. That's really where the magic lies, right? And so we talk about scripts. Scripts are massively important. However, if you're simply using scripts and ignoring behavior, your own and the other person's, scripts are just words. They're not tools, because you have to use them in conjunction with the behavior that's going on, right? You've heard me say a number of times in the last couple of weeks, don't ignore the human things that are happening across the table from you, right? You can't ignore that. If someone rolls their eyes and throws their hands up in disgust, you can't just let that go, right? That's emotion that has to be handled, right? If someone feels like they're getting bad news and you see that, you can certainly say, oh my goodness, I am so with you. I own property here too. Right? The main difference between you and I right now is that you're choosing to be a seller and I'm choosing not right now. Let's talk about whether knowing these facts exist, if this is the right time for you to be a seller. Remember I said to you, we're a little bit ahead of ourselves because we're kind of objection handling disagreement, which hasn't happened yet, right? But we kind of stumbled onto this conversation. Remember I told you last week that one of the best ways I know how to create trust with someone is to do or say something completely 180 degrees opposite of what they expect. If you in a listing appointment, because you sense or see or hear the person across the table floundering because the numbers that you're working with are so shocking to them, what they're not expecting you to do is say, wow, maybe we should take a pause and revisit your motivation. Maybe this is not the best time for you to be a seller. They're expecting you, the real estate agent, to tell them to list no matter what. List at all costs. Sell, 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 sell. And the second you take a step back and put yourself in their shoes and bring that what's happening on their side of the table to the table and have a conversation around it and offer help and guidance through it, holy Christmas, the entire conversation changes. It's not about the number anymore. Now it's about them. And maybe that conversation ends in them saying, you know what, I think you're right. This maybe is not the right time for me. Great. I support that decision. Let's talk about it a little bit more. If now is not the right time based on the motivations that you're now choosing to step away from, when might be the right time? How long do you think you're willing to wait? Because sometimes people say things like, now's not the right time. And when you ask a follow-up question, they say, maybe I'll put it on in 3 months. Okay, excellent. So I'm curious, what information do you have that says that the market will be any different or any better for you in 3 months, right? And maybe they have some and maybe they don't. But you see how it's continually asking questions to help them self-discover where they need to go.
I like the question also, how much is it worth to you to delay your decision, whether it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months? Do you want it to cost you $10,000, $20,000, $50,000?
It's a great question. Say that question one more time, Debbie.
How much is it worth to you to delay your decision?
Really good one.
Who can predict the future?
Right? And for those of you who feel like that's too strong of a question, I gave you 2 words to put in front of any question that softens it. What were those 2 words?
I understand.
I'm curious.
I'm curious. Yes, Margaret's got it. I'm curious, right? So if you just soften it a little bit, again, because some of you heard Debbie say that and like, oh goodness, that's like right between the eyeballs. Clearly you've never met Debbie Orr, but on top of that, right, there's always ways to soften things. And the reason I bring that back to your attention is because when we're kind of brainstorming through some of these things on these calls, if you start to hear yourself talking to yourself saying, oh, you know what, I'm not sure I could say that. That sounds a little bit aggressive. That sounds a little strong. Remember, don't discount what the script is. Just remember there are ways to soften things such that they're more comfortable for you to say. That's why I bring that back up, right? Don't discount what works. Just bring that little modifier in. Because when you stick I'm curious in front of any question, there's a pause and a break and it softens the rest of it. All right, so let's keep going. We've got 2 graphs to look at with the client. The first one looks something like this. It's the Brokermetrics supply and demand graph. Now, for tonight, what I want you to recognize is we don't have the time inside of this course for me to show you how to use Brokermetrics and where to find this. I promise you, I will put a class on the calendar for next week called Know Your Numbers, Brokermetrics and the MLS. So watch for that. That will bring you through both exercises to find this graph and on Brokermetrics and to calculate month supply of inventory, which is the next graph we're going to. For tonight, if you don't know how to access those or know how to calculate those things, just take heart that I'm going to show you that early next week. Let's just move through the script work that goes along with these graphs. So in your packet, you now have the next page up, which says Brokermetrics pricing script, right? So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at your screen. I want you to look at the graph that we've put up there. I want you to stay looking at it. I'm going to read the script for you. Match the words with what you're seeing, just like a seller would, and then give me some ahas at the tail end. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, on this snapshot of the current market, the red lines represent homes that are on the market and available. The blue lines represent homes that are currently under agreement, and the green lines represent homes that have actually sold and closed. I'm sure you could see how simple it would be to place you on the red line, but much more difficult to place you on the blue or green lines, as they represent a much smaller target. Do you agree? You do want to be on the blue or green lines, don't you? That's it. That's the whole script. So this graph with that script, what are your ahas?
For me, I'm assuming it speaks to how it's so important to price it accurately, because there's such a huge difference between the green and the blue and the red.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. What we're asking for people to recognize. Hold on, there's something going on in the chat. Holy crap, so many homes on the market. Yes, that's exactly right, Marcel. That's what we're looking for them to recognize, right? That even if you look right now, like look December and January, this is Wilton, I think I pulled up, right? If you look on the tail end over here, December and January, the last 2 months, that red line gets really, really short. However, it's still twice as tall as the blue line, right? So even if you're not way back here in the summer months or the spring months when the inventory is high, it's still twice as tall as the blue. So don't overanalyze, right? Just recognize that the red lines, anyone can be on the red line, because all that means is that you're on the market. However, you're focusing them in on, we have to make more precise decisions to get on the green and the blue lines. And the message I want to send to all of you tonight is, yes, even in a market moving this fast, right? Even in a market moving this fast. I have seen properties on the market, and you know what? Some of them are on this red line right over here, where they've come on the market at ridiculous prices. That's like, it's called like the Hail Mary price. Let's put it on and maybe something will happen. Well, you know what? People aren't that desperate because they sit on the market, right? And you can go to any town that you work in and find those outliers that are not receiving any attention in the market. And it's because they're mispriced, right? There's only one reason a house doesn't sell, and that's because it is mispriced. Any questions on the Brokermetric supply and demand graph or script? Guys, it's literally that fast. You're going to print that sucker out. They only change once a month in Brokermetrics, right? Because the upload happens right after the first of the month. So if it were me, I would print it once for the month for the towns that you work in, laminate them, and then just carry them around with you as tools. What's fun when you laminate them is that then you can lay them in front of somebody. Always bring 2 dry erase markers, and you can draw on them. If they have questions, you can circle it and say, look over here, and then just erase it and use it for the next appointment as well. So that is the extent of what you use that first graph for. It's just a 10,000 or 30,000 foot view of what is currently going on in the market. The main objection with using that graph is to help people, not only the S's and the I's, right? The people see pretty colors, because there are some people who like to look at pretty colors. So that's half the reason we use that graph, is that it's a distraction and they can see the pretty colors. But then when you reference the pretty colors and show them that they actually mean something, and what it means is you need to make decisions out of precision, not guesswork and not greed, right? That's kind of what we're saying without saying it. You need to make decisions based on fact and precision in order to get your home sold. That's the message we're looking to send. The next 2 pages in your packet give you a short script and then a chart. Now this chart it's old and it's from Woodbury, and it doesn't really much matter what it looks like. It's just an example of something that you could use to present conversations around months supply of inventory. Now, like I said, month supply of inventory is a calculation you'll work off of the MLS. I will show you that in that separate class, how to actually do the calculations. What you need to know for tonight is the reason it's important is because month supply of inventory talks about pace of the market and trending. Do you think it's important that your seller client, before making a decision about placing their home on the market and at what number, understands the pace of the market currently and the trending? Okay, say yes. The answer is yes. There we go. Okay, good. Even though I can't necessarily hear you, I can see you. I can see your lips moving or not moving. So before we run through this script, you should jot this down, because this is where month supply of inventory conversations tend to lead, right? There's a graph, there's a scale for month supply of inventory that if you don't know, jot down because you need to have this information. Somebody tell me how many months supply of inventory from how many months to how many months indicates a seller's market. Anybody know?
2 months?
So yeah, 2 months is definitely a seller's market. It's really 0 to 4, right? 0 to 4 defines the seller's market. The lower the number, the faster paced the market. Right now, in many of the towns that we service, the month supply of inventory for single family housing is less than 1 or 1.2 or 1.4, right? It's crazy how low it is. But anywhere from 0 to 4 months of inventory would indicate sellers are in charge. What about a buyer's market? How many months supply of inventory or above might indicate a buyer's market?
4 to 6.
So the answer is above 6, right? Above 6. Now, some of you may be saying, wait a minute, if up to 4, if 0 to 4 is a seller's market and above 6 is more of a buyer's market, like what about 5 into 6? Well, that's what we call a transitional market. Some people call it a balanced market. I'm not one of those people because I don't believe that the market is ever really truly balanced. It's always swinging in one direction or another. So I way prefer the term transitional market, because at 5 to 6 months, it could be transitioning into a buyer's market and you just don't know it yet. 30 days more might tell you that. It could be transitioning into a seller's market or whatever. If I said buyers the first time, seller's market, right? So you're just not sure which way. All right, so here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to take a look at the absorption rates in Woodbury, Connecticut graph that you have in front of you. I am going to read the script again while you look at the chart, because I want you to marry the words you're hearing with what you're seeing. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this chart outlines the month supply of inventory for the entire town of Woodbury and for different price brackets within Woodbury. Can you see how the market varies from price point to price point? I'm curious, based on this information, which range is moving the fastest? Someone can answer me.
Below 400,000.
So yes, from 250 to 400 absolutely is moving the fastest. And which would you say is moving the slowest?
Luxury.
Yeah, so luxury is definitely moving slow. Is it moving the slowest?
4 to 5.
Yeah, so that 400 to 550 range is actually moving slower than the over 700 range, right? So, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what do you think this information tells us about how precise we need to be when choosing the positioning of your home? Right, and of course the answer is, well, precise, right? We're just asking a question to get them to say the word, yeah, we have to be precise. Now, I will tell you that we used this for real a number of years ago to help secure a price reduction for a property in Woodbury. And what was interesting about it was it's easy to think that the highest end of the market moves the slowest. And in this scenario, these folks were listed at like 429. And the price reduction, the data spoke very strongly that they needed to be under $400,000 in order to get an offer. Do you see how this macro look at the market simply supports the fact that if you are interested in moving more quickly by almost 3 years, right? You see the difference, 41 months, which is 3.5 years versus 7 months, a half a year. That you need to tuck yourself under that 400 mark. Do you see how that works? Do you see how that's a tool to help sellers make better decisions? Because in a range, they need to know what the pace of the market is. Now, right now, most of the price ranges are moving very quickly, and yet there are still differences. It's why it's important for you to understand what's going on in each bracket of the market in the town or city that you are listing in. Because listing over 700 or just below 700 may make a huge difference. It may be the difference in you being on the market an extra 4 to 6 months. Maybe it's just an extra month. And then you get to have a conversation around, I'm curious, can you afford that extra month? You see how it all just kind of points to additional questions to help the seller make good decisions? All righty. Questions, comments, concerns about month supply of inventory and that short script? Yes, Alex.
You know, I was looking at it yesterday and, you know, those are some pretty wide ranges.
Yes, for this was done again specifically for Waterbury. So if you were working in Waterbury in 2017 when this was designed, these were the price ranges that made sense,
Okay.
right? There was very little inventory under $400,000. So that became the catch-all category. And then it stepped up by $100,000 or $200,000 price ranges. So again, I'm not stating that in every town or city, these are the price ranges. You have to look at the market and understand, certainly in a market that has more high-end properties, you're not going to say 700 plus, right? You may need to, in some markets, you may need to do 5 to 6 and then 6 to 7 and 7 to 8, right? If your property is going to fall right in that mix, you may need to break it down by $100,000 right around the property and then broaden it for above and below. Yes, Elena.
It's not Waterbury, it's Woodbury. That's where I am. So there are no homes in Waterbury at this price range for sure. And just so you know, today in Woodbury is just 25 houses for sale compared to 119, if that stats are correct.
Yeah, so like totally crazy, right? Did I say Waterbury? Sorry, I oftentimes slip into Waterbury. It's like my other life happens in Waterbury. So so again, understand that the month supply of inventory conversation is crazy important to help people understand pacing. Debbie, did you have one last thing on month supply of inventory?
I did, and it is that it's so amazing how quickly it can change. So we lived through years, literally a decade of that difficult buyer market with inventory up to our ears. And suddenly, last May, it swung. So that swing, when Rick was talking about the balanced market, the 4 to 6 months of supply, I see that as a swing. And that swing went like that. to a seller's market, and it's gotten stronger and stronger and stronger. 4 houses in Woodbury, holy crow. There would be 4 houses in Woodbury in a $5,000 price bracket in the olden days, and that's the whole town now. And the thing is, pay attention, because it can go just like this if everybody decides now is the time to put their house on the market. So you've got to keep your eyes open and your ears to the ground.
Yeah, so that brings me to a point that, because Debbie brought us right to the edge of the point, and that is, make sure that you're doing month supply of inventory work the day of or the day before you're having seller conversations. Don't do it once at the beginning of the month and think that you can use those numbers through the whole month, especially with how fast things are moving today, right? You've got to be absolutely on top of what's happening right now so that those sellers can make decisions based on what's happening right now. And oh, by the way, jumping ahead, once your properties are on the market, you need to stay on top of that just as often, to be communicating that to your sellers in case things change. As Debbie said, that transition, that swing that happened, it happened seemingly overnight. Seemingly overnight. And it could swing back just as quickly. If all of a sudden the New York buyers turn off and the Connecticut-based sellers turn on, bam, you go from 1 month supply of inventory to 11 month supply of inventory in a week's time. I know that sounds crazy, and yet it swung this way almost that quickly. It's what makes this fun, guys. It's watching the pace and the craziness and how things swing. You understand that if you heard my answer to Eric's question before, Eric asked me in their role play, I can't remember what question he asked, but the answer to it was, it was something brilliant.
It's Thursday.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I cannot remember what I was going to say.
You have to step away. It'll come back to you.
Yeah, all right, I'm going to take a walk around the block.
Was it about the realities, Rick? How do these realities affect your property?
Yeah, it was a different point I was looking to make. I can't find it, so it'll come to me later or it won't. Trust that it was a brilliant statement that I was going to make, and just trust me on that. So with those market conditions questions and those 2 quick graphs with those 2 short scripts, right? That whole process, even though it took us 30 or more minutes to get through them, that whole process is about 4 minutes in your listing consultation. It's short and fast, right? You're asking the questions, you're listening to the answers, you're taking down the answers, you're asking for permission to move to kind of a macro conversation with market conditions. You're showing the graph with the script, you're showing the chart on a month supply of inventory with the script, asking if there's any questions, and then moving forward. So it's actually a short period of time, even though we spend more time on it to explain it all. And then what you get, there's a bunch of stuff going on in the chat that is not relevant to me. Perfect. So where we get to, where all this has been leading up to, drum roll please, is the SPA. Now, what is the SPA? How many of you have heard of a CMA, just by a quick show of hands? Okay, that's far fewer of you than I thought. So I think most of you have heard of CMA, right? Because CMA is the kind of the tried and true standard of real estate. It's what most of us have been trained to do over the years. It's what they still talk about in principles and practices, right? The CMA, the comparable market analysis. So what on earth is an SPA? Right. So here's certainly in my world, the CMA is like the age of the dinosaurs. we've evolved forward from the CMA to the SPA. And so the SPA is just our version of the CMA. You gather the same data. You need to know the same stuff. You need to know what's sold. You need to find good comps. You need to know what's active on the market, right? You're doing much of the same work as a CMA. The presentation, however, is very different. And let me give you a quick background as to where this came from. When the market went sideways when the market went sideways, it actually started to go sideways. Does anyone know the height of the last market? The last market height before the last crash was actually October of 2006, right? October of 2006 was the actual apex of that market. And from there, it started to come down. And what was interesting is that in 2007, nobody really noticed it. And then by the time we got to end of 2007, you could tell something was different. And then in 2008, the real estate industry woke up and said, "Oh my goodness, like we're in a shifted market." I'm not sure the sellers ever really figured it out, right? But there was this delay. Go ahead, Deb.
I have to say, I remember October 2006 vividly because I was in California waiting for my son to come back from a tour of duty abroad. And I remember doing some of the calculations and going, the inventory is going up. The active properties are going up. But I wasn't smart enough to know what that really was going to mean for us. And what happened was in that, from October through the next 4 months, houses didn't sell. The deposits were down, so the inventory kept going up. Just like now, the inventory keeps going down because we keep selling twice as many houses as we have coming on. It was the inverse of that. So it's so fascinating to watch the teeter-totter.
Yeah. And so while that was all going sideways, right, by the time we were into 2007 into 2008, we had a lot of our agents coming back to the office really frustrated because as the industry started to recognize what was going on and the sellers were not recognizing what was going on, we were encouraging people, like we always do, to sit down and have factual, truthful conversations based on what was going on in the marketplace. And our agents kept coming back saying, you know what, this is for the birds. I keep losing listings because I'm sitting there telling them the truth. Someone else is coming in there telling them what they want to hear, which is not really supported by much of anything. And the other person's getting the listing. And so we started to look around and say, okay, well, how can we assist with a process that doesn't include lining 3 people up, 3 agents up, stamping the number they bring to the table on their forehead, and then picking the highest one, because that's what was happening, right? Whenever there was competition, it was about who had the highest number. And we had a colleague, we still have a colleague in the Summit, New Jersey, Short Hills, Summit, New Jersey area named Sue Adler, who had kind of perfected this system of having conversations with her sellers and getting hired based on her skill and value proposition, and then having a conversation about pricing and positioning in partnership afterward. The pricing and the positioning piece of this was not what got you hired, right? And so we asked her how she was doing that. We gathered some data and built this version of the SPA. Diana Kokoska was instrumental because much of this comes from her bold listing script. But the whole idea of it was designed to push the responsibility of delivering a number to the client, where it belongs, by the way, right? How many of you actually own the asset that you're discussing when you're sitting across the table from a seller? Right? Most of you never own that asset. So do you have any right to tell somebody what it's worth? No, your job is one of education, right? You get to lay all the facts out. Remember, we're the options people. Remember the job description I gave you, to interpret current conditions such that the client can make the best business decision possible. So this is us interpreting the data with them, which is different than for them, just by the way, with them, which is why we ask a lot of questions and involve them in the process, such that they can make the best decision possible. And so what that did over time was allowed our agents to not only consult at a higher level and involve the seller in the pricing and positioning of their own property, which is where that belongs anyway, but it gave us a leg up in the market because sellers weren't discounting our agents because they didn't like the number, because the number didn't come from them. It came from the seller, just based on data. So those of you on the call who have done this both ways, which do you find works better? I'm just curious.
The Keller Williams way, this way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what, it's kind of hands down the secret sauce. You want to win more listings and not have to argue about pricing, positioning, or here's what's cool, commissions. This is the path. This is the path. So let's go through it, shall we? Let's go through it. So the SPA. So Donna, if it's all right with you, I'd like to use you as my seller in this, and let's run through this one time just to hear the through line of it, right? So be as agreeable as possible, understanding, guys, that this is not always how it goes, right? People are not always agreeable. Oftentimes they are, and yet oftentimes they're not. So I want Donna to be agreeable so you can hear the through line, then we'll go back and pick it apart a little bit. So Donna, do you have any other questions on the economics and market conditions data that we just discussed?
No, that was very clear. Thank you.
Excellent. You're quite welcome. So if it's all right with you, what I'd like to do is move to a more specific version of this discussion and really focus in on how all of this information affects your home. In order to be successful and obtain the result that you're looking for, I'd like for us to spend a little time examining the market through the eyes of both the buyer and the bank's appraiser. How does that sound to you?
Oh, that sounds great. I hadn't considered the bank's appraiser.
Yeah, an important piece, right? So let's do this. Let's first take a look at the best 3 sold comparable properties to yours that have sold in Danbury in the past 3 months. I'm curious, have you seen any of these houses?
Oh, yes. Actually, this one, 123 Main Street, I actually went to an open house there.
Ah, excellent. What were your thoughts about it?
It's nice. They redid the kitchen.
Ah, nice. In a way that was appealing to you?
Yeah. It's kind of some of the things we were thinking about doing if we were staying.
Understood. And I'm curious, how would you say it compares to your home, other than the kitchen?
I can see why you brought it. Yeah, same number of bedrooms, baths. It's just a block away. Yeah, I totally.
Good. So do me a favor, Donna, if you would, take a moment and review each of these comparable homes. This one you clearly have some more data points on. These other two, just take a moment to review the data on these sheets. And again, I want you to look at them through the buyer's eyes. And I'll give Donna a moment to review. So Donna, if you had to buy one of these homes today, which of these 3 would it be?
Well, probably the 123 Main Street, because it's, it's got a lot plus the updated kitchen and that looks like a good price.
Understood, understood. So it sounds to me like you chose that one kind of best bang for the buck. Is that a fair assessment?
Pretty much. Yeah, no, it looks like a decent value. I wouldn't have to put in the kitchen. The other two, well, mine, and then the other one, from the pictures, I'm not quite sure how updated the kitchen is. I mean, it's nice, but still, that one, 123 Main Street, it looks like the best value.
Got it. Got it. And just because it's upside down, I can't quite see it. What is the sold price on that one?
$499.
$499. Got it. And so, Donna, would you agree that that property that you just chose is basically comparable to your home?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So let's take a quick pivot. Here is a list of all of the current competition in this range. In other words, when you go on the market,
Yeah.
these will be the homes that buyers are also looking at while they're considering your home.
Huh. Okay.
Now, as a reminder, as you look at this list of current competition, the main data point from the market conditions information we discussed earlier was the word precise. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. So when you combine that, the idea of being precise with the comparable data that you just reviewed, where do you feel you should position your property on this list to outperform any and all other properties for sale?
Well, I was hoping to be slightly over. I was hoping to be around 500, but now seeing that other one, and yet things are moving quickly. So, I mean, I would love it to be 499 also. Do you think that's realistic?
Well, so that's a great question, and I'll answer that this way. Earlier in the conversation, when you outlined for me the three things that were most important to you, one of the things you said was having the property sell relatively quickly so that you could get down to Austin. What
Right.
was helpful? Would be helpful? And so I guess my question would be, if you missed the mark, are you okay perhaps taking longer to sell if in fact you missed the mark on the positioning?
Yeah, I take your point. No, I do want it to sell quickly. I do want to get to Austin.
Got it. And at the same time, the market is moving quickly. So all those things together, I know.
Maybe 489. I don't know. I would love to squeeze out as much as I can, but I can see I need to be a little bit less.
Sure.
Because I do want to start packing. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what, I do believe the data supports that decision, that 489 number. Is that a place that you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I am. I
Okay.
am, given everything you've shown me and knowing how important it is to get there. Yeah.
Indeed. Well, great work. I think you're making an excellent choice here. And so the only thing that's left now is to fill that number here on the contract and sign away. And then we can truly let the magic begin.
That's great. Let's do that.
Excellent. All right. So that's the through line for the SPA. The quick version is 3 sold comps. Talk with the client about what they see in those comps. Ask specific questions about whether they see those comps as comps for their home. Ask which one they would purchase if they had to pick one of those 3, right? Now they're behaving like their own buyer. They're modeling their own buyer's behavior, by the way. That's why we asked them to do that. And for objection handling, it comes in handy because Donna actually picked that one, right? So if she starts to object later to being priced at or just below the one she picked, because she herself said that had an updated kitchen and she did not, right? We can just simply reroute the conversation to her choices of earlier. This isn't me telling her. She made all the decisions, right? And then once you've had those 3 comp conversations, the 3 comps you're going to pick should be close enough that it doesn't matter which one she picks. You're not hoping and praying she picks the middle one, right? It's not, what is that shell game thing, right? It's not that. We're not trying to find the ball of yarn underneath the cups. Any one she picks should be comparable enough that it will guide her when given the list of actives to utilize that information to pick a spot on that list. So for all intents and purposes, right, we talked with you yesterday about giving you a strategy that doesn't have you deliver a price. Except think about what you're doing. You're giving them the best 3 sold comps. So the 3 comps I gave to Donna were $4.99, $4.91, and $4.87 or whatever, right? Or $4.99, $4.91, and $4.81. Those were the best 3 sold comps. Just in and of that, aren't I giving her a number? The number I'm giving her is you can probably expect your house to sell in the high 4s. Right? I'm just not saying that. And then when I give her the list of actives, in that scenario where that best comp that Donna chose was a $4.99 sale, I'm probably running from like $4.75 to $5.25 or maybe something like that, $4.50, $4.55 to $5.25 or $5.35. That's the range I'm giving because she belongs kind of right in the middle there. Do you see how the process works? Is it clear? I know it's a little squirrely on Zoom because we're not in the classroom, so I don't have pieces of paper in front of me projecting all that. What we should do is actually practice it once the way it would happen on a Zoom call so that you can put them up on the screen. I didn't prepare for that, so we can do that. We can do a how do I do a Zoom listing presentation for you right after family reunion. Oh, speaking of family reunion, by the way, if you're on this call and you're not registered for family reunion, you are missing out on a massive opportunity. For $80, you get 3.5 days of time with Gary, time with Josh, time with Jason Abrams, time with Mo Anderson, 4 of the best leaders in the real estate industry. But more than that, you get breakouts that you can choose based on topic so that you can learn from the best in the industry on what you choose to learn on. You want to find masters at expireds, there'll be at least a panel or 2 on that. You want to find someone who gives you great scripts about calling your database, there'll be panels on that. So I'm not kidding. If you want my best piece of business advice to you for the month of February, if you are not registered for family reunion, it's February 15th through 18th. Send me an email. Most of you are sitting in front of your computer right now. You can just do it right now. Send me an email, rick.scott@kw.com, and tell me to add you to the list. And I will have Maria register you when we register the next batch tomorrow. You're foolish to miss it. That is business owner to business owner. You are foolish to miss it. Okay, that was a little bit of a bunny trail. So, any questions on the process? Yes, Eric.
Yeah, not really on the process. This is great. This is probably one of the best sessions so far, if I may say so. Maybe it got lost in translation in my mind, but nowhere have we discussed during this consultation, I'm not sure about the previous one, about what your commission will be. And you make them sign the contract already. So
That is
did I miss
correct.
something?
You did not. You are very astute. We haven't talked about commission because I will tell you that my version of commission is that it's pre-filled in. It's not a conversation. It's pre-filled in the contract. And for me, it's pre-filled in at 6%. And when they sign the contract, if there's a question about your value, it will come up then. And then you can objection handle or have a conversation, if you so choose, around a commission. But it's not a separate line item on what we address. If you'll also notice, we haven't had a long conversation about marketing either. When did the marketing conversation happen? It happened before they got to the office, right? Because they got the pre-listing package. And if there were questions around that, they're bringing them to the table. Sometimes that happens, right? Sometimes you need to clarify. Sometimes people heard something from someone else and they want to make sure that you have a version of that or you do that as well. Here's one of the dirty little secrets of real estate. And I want to give it to you so that you are armed with it. And then I think there's some questions. I'll come back to them. Guys, everybody, brand to brand to brand, has the same tools available to them. Don't make your argument, don't make your pitch about Keller Williams is better. Don't make your pitch about we'll showcase you on more websites. Hey, by the way, how many websites do we showcase listings on? There's a simple script for that.
All of them.
That's
Too many
the
to
script.
count.
That's the script, Bogdan. Say it again.
All of them.
All of them. That's the answer. Right? It's fascinating to me how many sellers still kind of ask that question, right? How many websites do you, because where did they get that question? They got it because they saw somebody else who said, oh, and we have the most websites. Let me give you a quick infomercial. Hold on. I'm going to just pause the recording a second. Conversations around marketing. With all due respect, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, that is not the path to a sold sign in front of your house. Market expertise and strategic positioning. That's the path to a sold sign in front of your house. That's the path to potentially finding multiple players to bring an offer. That's the path to maximizing the equity in your home. And here's the good news. That's what I have an expertise in. Sign here. Alex.
I'm sure you'll address this, and just let me ask you. I have had on occasion listing appointments where commission question has come up very early. So I'd love to hear how you deflect.
Yeah, so I'll give you, I'll pass this to Debbie and Donna and Bogdan if they want to take a crack at it as well. Actually, why don't I do that first and I'll give you mine last. Anybody want to take a crack at what happens if commission comes up early in the conversation?
I deflect it to after we've had the conversation about getting about their pricing and their positioning and the whole program. And first of all, I'll ask, may I ask why that's important to you? And I may also ask, did you have an idea of what you were interested in, what commission you were interested in paying? Always a question. A question is always better than an answer. Never shoot from the hip.
Well, and here's why. Because most people who ask questions, they're not really looking for an answer to that question. What they're looking for is it's always another test. Is she really the one? Is she really the one? Oh, I'm going to throw this at her. What does she have to say? Oh.
It's so interesting that you say it comes up early. It rarely comes up early. There's so much more that you can be talking about.
Well, so, Donna, go ahead, and then back to Alex.
So the behavior you modeled for us, I don't remember if it's the last call or the one before last session, I think you said who was it? Reagan, the Reagan, let me jot that down. So,
Yes.
and yes, I mean, when I switched and started doing this way of presenting, it rarely comes up, period, end of sentence. It rarely comes up. And yet if it does, no matter at what point, particularly if it's early though, I do say, oh, commission. Okay, let me just jot that down right here. I'll make sure we cover that. And then I go on with my presentation, and remarkably, it rarely comes up again. I mean, it rarely comes up so much that there's literally, when it comes up, it's when they're signing the contract and it's like a throwaway. It's, what was the commission again? Oh, 6, okay, so, I mean, it's a non-event.
The other thing is, so many times they will say back to you, oh, I thought it was 6%. Oh, I thought it was 6%. Oh, 6%, that sounds right.
Absolutely. And exactly what Rick said, it's a test. It's a test to see if you will go there, if that scares you. Do you believe that you're worth whatever? So I have so much to tell you about your home and counseling you and asking you questions that, yeah, let's not use our time there. You know, I'll just jot that down. And at some point, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, if that's a question at the end, it may be, we'll get to it, but I'm pretty sure it won't be. That's that's my mindset.
Smart. Go ahead, Bogdan.
I actually have a slide, and it's called the commission menu, and it's the last before the last slide. I can share it real quick if you give me. So I tell them pretty much, you know, it's there. Just wait for it. And I always start with the higher commission, because like that they see the value, and then I start removing stuff until I get to 5%.
Right, so this is called like menu of services, and I want you to notice that very, very smartly, 7% is the top tier here. You want the best? It costs you 7. Here's something kind of in the middle that costs you 6. There's a little less over here for 5.5, and the real bargain basement price, if you don't want a whole lot of going on, here's 5%. Love that.
Hey, Rick.
Yes.
I was going to ask you if you have anything like that, but my guy here beat you to it. So could I please get a copy of that? I would appreciate it.
Yeah, if you send me an email, I'll send you the.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Yes, so Bogdan, do me a favor. I think, is it B. Stefanide at KW?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, yeah, good. So if you want that copy, just ask Bogdan. He'll be happy to send you that so that you can start building.
$50 gift card.
Oh, there you go. Oh, excuse me. Alex, go ahead. Finish up while I choke.
Well, slightly different, and I know you want to give your take. So come back to me. It's about Facebook and Google.
Got it. So my take is what they said. Right, because that's exactly those are the answers, right? Those are the answers. Now, here's what I can tell you. Some of you are sitting thinking, okay, well, that's all well and fine. I don't really believe that commission doesn't come up, right? If you've experienced commission conversations, it's hard to trust what you've just heard. If you're brand new to the industry, it's hard to trust what you've just heard. I want to give a perspective on that. Number one, if it's an experience issue, so if you don't have the experience, what I would recommend, I would strongly encourage you to just have the mindset, build a value proposition, right? This is the conversation I gave you the other day. Remember the kook that was giving me advice? Well, what she told me was build your value proposition up. People are willing to pay more for more. I like to, and you can use this as a script. I kind of like it as a script. Some people hate it as a script. I'm okay either way, right? The idea of comparing commission to beef. And so here's the script, right? I'm curious, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, have you ever had just kind of this doesn't work for vegetarians, just by the way. Have you ever had a longing for a really good burger, right? And you're kind of okay going to the diner for that really good burger. But have you ever had a longing for filet mignon, right? Where the diner's just not going to cut it. You're going to go to Chuck's, or you're going to go to Capitol Grill, or you're going to go to, go to Ruth's Chris in the city for that filet mignon. I'm curious, they're both beef, right? But for one, you're willing to spend more for a better experience. Would it surprise you to know that this is just like that? Most of my clients are willing to pay my filet mignon prices for the quality and experience that they receive, instead of paying for the chop meat of real estate. Right? So it's a like I said, you either hate that or Morton's, that was the one I couldn't think of. Thank you, Ralph. Clearly a filet mignon man. You don't necessarily have to use that as a script. I kind of think it's a fun script, and yet some people think it's horrible. You get to make that choice, right? The point is, you have to convince yourself first. That was where I was going, right? You have to convince yourself that you're worth filet mignon prices, not hamburger prices, before you can convince somebody else. So that means, so I go right back to the advice I got from Debbie 20 years ago, which is build your value proposition. Make sure that when people look at what you do, when I look at Bogdan's list of services, right? That's an impressive list of services. And as a seller, I think to myself, well, I don't necessarily want to pay more, but I certainly want the services. And so now I'm in a dilemma, like, okay, well, what am I willing to pay for? It's not about being the cheapest one out there, right? If your value proposition is about being cheap, that is a race to the bottom. Nobody wins that, right? Why don't we just all do it for free? Then we don't have an industry anymore, right? Donna.
So I just wanted to share a perspective that it was in the mastermind from the fall. I was watching one of the breakout sessions, and it was a group of, they were luxury agents, and yet there was one woman. And so they're dealing in some pretty large numbers. And the question was, how do you objection handle when someone wants to cut your commission or talk to you about reducing your commission? And she traditionally got 6% on $1 million homes. And we went through the panel, and they finally got to her, and she kind of had a face, and she said, so I don't have time to work with discount clients. And I thought, oh my God, talk about a mind switch. And so, right? It's like, wow. She'd rather go find another client or whatever. I don't even think about that. Why would that get in your head? So I thought that was brilliant.
Well, what you're talking about is a mindset of abundance versus a mindset of scarcity, right? My goodness, so many things go back to scarcity versus abundance. If you're building a life and a business and are practicing a mindset of abundance, and I say practicing for a reason, right? Because if you don't naturally have a mindset of abundance, you need to practice. That's like working out your other muscles, right? When you work out your biceps to have them get bigger or whatever, you have to work out your mindset as well. You have to make sure that you're feeding your mind with things that bring you to a place of abundance, recognizing that if for some reason you don't get that listing, you have a lead generation pipeline and conversion skills that you can go on to the next one. It can't, you struggle because you make different decisions if it's all about, if I don't get this listing, like I can't feed my children. Then all of a sudden something is better than nothing. And what I have learned over the 50, almost 1 years of my life, and certainly in the 21 years of my real estate business, is that for the most part, that something is better than nothing axiom does not hold true, right? Oftentimes, you're better off with a nothing on that one if you will then devote your time and energies to finding a better something, right? That's just another version of what Donna just said. The other reality is that when you go to like our national convention, when you register for family reunion, I'm certain most of you have sent me that email by now. If you're not already registered, please note that if it's not in my email, I know who was on the call and you'll be receiving a text from me later this evening. So just put yourself out of your misery. I tend to get what I want. So go ahead and just send the email if you're not already registered, because you need to be there. Well, here's the thing. If you're serious about making a career out of real estate, why wouldn't you choose to spend 3 days with the best people in the country? Okay, enough said. But here's the thing. When you attend family reunion and you choose to attend a session about objection handling, and someone brings up objection handling for commissions, typically the people on the stage who are doing the impressive objection handling, they struggle with that one. And it's not that they struggle because they don't know what to say. It's because they've moved their skill and confidence with what they deliver to the seller such that they just don't get those objections anymore. And so I'm always fascinated when someone says, well, what do you say when they say, will you do it for 4%? They're kind of on the stage like, all right, well, do you have a good one for that? Do you have a good one for that? Because they don't answer those questions, right? And it's a level of, this script will help you. Please trust these words, because I know we're out of time. Please trust these words, because no truer words were ever spoken. If you will follow this process, if you will utilize this tool that we've given you, if you'll practice it and present it confidently with a consultant's heart and a business person's head, you will not have to worry about objection handling commissions as much as you think you do. Or if you have done so in the past, that's the solution. The solution is be more confident, raise your value, and just convince those people that you are talking to that you are the one. Because guess what? The experience of many of us on this call is that people will pay for the one. People don't fight about what it costs when the one walks in. And so if you're struggling on the commission side, it's because you haven't done enough to convince them you're the one. And the good news is that's all fixable. You can change all of that with practice, role play, and then just doing it. Go out and find yourself some listing appointments. And you know what else? Go out and don't be afraid to fail at your listing appointments. You won't. However, if you go out unafraid to fail, it will remove all the terror and pressure. What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is that you look a little stupid and you don't get the listing. No one ever died from that. No one even ever had to go to the hospital for that, right? You either win or you learn. We're going to leave it right at that. You either win or you learn. Guys, it is 6 o'clock. As always, it is a pleasure to spend time with you. I hope this was helpful. We will pick up on Tuesday with the anatomy of a seller transaction, and we'll also talk about the rest of our time together, because clearly we're not going to finish on time. So we're going to figure that out.
Wait,
And bring that to you on Tuesday about how we're going to address that. We're running up into family reunion of the following week. So we do have to make a couple of adjustments. So Tuesday, 4 o'clock, I will see you all then. Have a lovely, yes.
I thought Brockton had an announcement. I'm very curious what his announcement is.
Yes.
Bogdan, go for it.
Thanks. So this week we started a lead generation accountability group on Facebook with people from productivity, Jen's Productivity. And it's actually a contest. Whoever gets the first listing, I'm gonna do all the photography and videography for their listing.
Wow.
Ooh, baby.
And 3D modeling as well. So we meet Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays from 11 to 1 p.m. So if you're interested, shoot me a message on Facebook and I'll add you.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That's awesome.
And by the way, we started yesterday. Yesterday we had 12 people. Today we had 7. And today I got a lead for some land in Jamaica. So I'm already talking to someone from Jamaica.
I love it. Jamaican me hungry.
Yep. That's all.
All right. Thank you, my friends. Guys, we'll see you soon. Kate, did you have one thing?
Oh, well, I was just going to let you know, I mean, just for anybody, but I called at some expireds yesterday and I left a nice brief message and a gentleman called me back today to meet on Monday morning. So that's always exciting. So it does work and that will be a nice avenue, I think. So, and he hadn't been on the market since August of last year. So.
Rock star. You just got to do it. You just got to do it. See? Thank you, Kate. That's awesome news. We're going to leave with that. Everyone go home inspired by the fact that if you just do the activities, you create results. You're going to be a rocket ship ride. Guys, I love you. Take care. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock.
Bye.